Professor Andy Macmillan looks at the architecture of Paisley, the second of 6 Scottish boroughs.
Town Hall is a gift of the Clarks, while in the foreground the dignified statues of Peter and Thomas Coates gaze modestly away into space, embarrassed perhaps by the obvious charms of this young nursing mum who herself inappropriately faces the gentleman's loo. A double dubious confrontation of the kind to bring a smile to the face of any urban explorer. Legend has it that somewhere around the middle of the 6th century, Mirren the Celtic saint established a church near a ford on the River Cart, at a point where a convenient waterfall also provided the opportunity for a fish pond. Unfortunately, any trace of that original settlement is now obliterated by Peter and James Clark's vast Seed Hill Mills. Paisley as we see it today is largely the result of the local discovery and development of steam power. James Watt, after all, was only just down the road in Glasgow or Greenock. The spread of steam power led to the elimination of the famous individualistic cottage weavers whose skills had made Paisley famous. Manufacturing was increasingly carried on in purpose-built factories, and resources were concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. The first steam-powered cotton factory was built in 1782, and by the 1840s life for the independent cottage weaver was impossible. By the 1860s, only 4 families were left outside the big 3, the Kerrs, the Clarks and the Coates. By the 20th century only the Coates remained, and suddenly, in the mid-50s, it all disappeared. Manufacturing was moved abroad to third world countries in search of lower costs. Today the Coates mills at Ferguslie are a dismal sight. Only the number 1 spinning mill still sadly stands alongside the ruins of the counting house on a desolate, rubble-strewn plain. Massive and monumental, with decorative corner cupolas, this 5-storey cast iron and concrete mill is clad in red and yellow brick. Even in ruin, the huge cast iron canopy of the North Gatehouse is evocative of the pride the Victorian Coates took in their industry. And surely this Indian head is a tribute to the land of cotton. Can some contemporary use, yuppie flats perhaps, not be found to save these wonderful buildings? This factory school, with its fine white marble carvings celebrating geography and learning, very appropriate in a world empire, is surely rather more than a mere functional building. Look at these wonderful carvings, the swags, the dentils up above, the curving consoles, and this wonderful floral roundel. No expense has been spared, and this polished granite portico is reminiscent of the loggia of the Signoria in Florence. Each of these mills had what was virtually a new town attached to it. The Coates and the Clarks saw themselves as caring employers, providing housing, schools and other amenities for their workforce. And here in Kilnside Road, we not only see the magnificent Mile End Mill with its monumental chimney and its decorative cupola, but also the social stratification of the community. With the foreman here at the top of the hill in the bay-windowed houses, and the rest of the workforce at the foot of the hill in the plainer houses, nearer the factory. This handloom is a reminder that Paisley's reputation for the manufacture of fine textiles and thread was based on the skills of the 18th century independent cottage weavers, whose shawls had swept the fashionable world. These small shop cottages are a tribute to their lifestyle. They are in marked contrast with the grander mansions of the entrepreneurs who marketed their wares. These fine townhouses reveal the richness of Paisley's Georgian inheritance and the wealth created by its American trade. This interesting little garden pavilion was once the coach house of Greenlaw House, a country mansion in its own grounds. Now surrounded by suburban villas, and itself somewhat marred by this inappropriate Victorian porch. Its Palladian aspirations and Georgian parapets are curiously echoed across the road in this pair of 1920s arts and crafts houses built from a precast concrete kit of classical parts. Captain John Sleezer, a 17th century travelling Dutch military engineer, made this view, which shows the new weavers' cottages at Maxwelton, the old borough clustered round the Tolbooth, the toll bridge across the River Cart, and the remnant of the old abbey founded in the 11th century by Benedictine monks from Shropshire. 12 brothers and their prior Osbert established their community here. Only the slated 15th century nave remains of the original church today. The tower and copper-roofed choir are the work of 19th and 20th century restorers. The fine early English doorway dates from the 13th century with its serried pilasters and cut-back mouldings. The place, or palace of Paisley, now the church manse, is all that remains of the original domestic buildings of the abbey. It was here, shortly after the Reformation, that a grateful nephew of the last abbot, now Lord Paisley, entertained James I in 1617. This is Lorimer's splendid choir of 1932, and the slightly earlier tower. So this great Gothic abbey is not quite as medieval as it would seem. And why did Lorimer choose to use copper instead of the traditional slate? This astonishing Gothic mini isle, which I've just paddled down, is in fact the finest stretch of 14th century drain or sewer in the whole of Britain. It was built during the reconstruction after the English burned the abbey to the ground in 1307 and is very finely crafted for a drain. It's curious that this marvellous state-of-the-art in the 14th century drain should turn up in Paisley, a place that didn't close its own open sewers in the streets until 1870 and actually didn't have a modern sewage treatment plant till 1953. Oakshaw is the northern side of the old borough. The original Toft boundaries can still be seen here, but Oakshaw's claim to fame lies in its incredible silhouette, created by the finest collection of urban monuments anywhere in the region. The high church with its spectacular step steeple stands at the top of Church Hill. It was designed in 1750 by John White, a local baillie who was also the architect of the town Tolbooth. All along the hill is a proliferation of churches in every style, from classic to Romanesque and Gothic, a testimony to the versatility of the Victorian architect and the capacity for devotion and dissension of the Paisley weaver. The Gallic chapel, curiously enough, has its sign in English and Latin.